right now. Starting on the mixer in 5, 4, 3.
Welcome to the SaveOne Podcast, where we share testimonials of overcoming inner turmoil and tackle the tough topic of common mental health struggles. Our goal is to create a community of believers who support each other through camaraderie, understanding, and love by revealing the secrets we so frequently try to hide from others. You are never alone. All right, guys, how are y'all doing today? We just had a little monkey wrench thrown into today's episode. Last minute, Thomas had something come up and wasn't able to be here. So today's goal is for me to walk through my life story, give my testimony, and Daniel Anderson, our producer, is going to step in and give some feedback and help guide that conversation. And so we're going to make the best of it. We're not going to let Satan knock us down and cancel this episode.
Not today.
So
let's hop in. Let's do it, brother.
Yeah, so we're going to hop in similar to what we did Thomas's. I'm going to start with childhood. We're going to go through and let's see where God takes us.
Sounds good, brother.
All right, so obviously my name's Jeremy Rast. Grew up in Pearl, Mississippi. Spent my entire time as a child through graduation in Pearl. 2 wonderful parents that have been married 46 years now.
They're still together?
Believe. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And
good relationship, or is it
yes.
rocky? Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had something to look at.
Yeah. I was very, very blessed with the family I grew up in. So 2 wonderful parents. I have 2 older sisters. Middle sister's 4 years older than me, and then my oldest sister's 8 years older than me. And so grew up in the classic middle upper class family in Pearl. I mean, mom and dad are at every event, support anything you want to do, love you, dinner on the table every night kind of deal, like perfect. Couldn't have asked for a better childhood. A father who is the best there is. A lot of opposite of me in that he has a lot of characteristics I wish I had. He's much more calm, level-headed, always showing love and patience with us. You know, my mom worked her butt off for us too, but we always had what we needed and had most all of our wants as well. So no complaints there. Grew up religious side, grew up in a small Church of Christ in Pearl. And that was fun as a little kid because my parents were actually over the youth group. My sisters were in the youth group. And then I was the young little pain in the butt that got to run around on all the stuff that they did and cause grief for my sisters and for the other people in the youth group. But came up through all that, and when I got into my teenage years, my parents had actually stepped out of doing the youth group stuff. Sisters were graduating school when I was coming up, and that's really where my story begins of going downhill. When I turned 15, 15 years old was the first time I sipped alcohol.
Was there an event that happened at that point, or was that just kind of the beginning? That was just the beginning of. That was just the beginning of the party phase.
Yeah, like, you know, all my friends around that time, like, we kind of hit that point where we could drive, and so then, you know, we had some older friends that could get it, and I remember, I can still remember, first night ever drinking alcohol was somebody had tons and tons of Smirnoff.
Smirnoff Ice.
And I remember drinking.
Or no, Smirnoff the vodka?
No, the Smirnoff Ice drinks.
Okay, so the beer. Yeah.
And, dude, I'm laughing about it. This is bad at 15 years old. Drinking, like, I remember I drank like 15, 16 of them things until I just puked because they were so acidic and stuff. So, but.
Doing it right from the beginning, man.
Yeah, like, I dive into stuff. So from that moment, though, I fell in love with wanting to be drunk. I was not a athletic guy. I was not the super popular one. I wasn't the one the girls were after. I didn't have a lot of, truthfully, I was very insecure. And that's kind of the core of what I see now and have learned. Why I went down some of the roads I did was very insecure of myself. My sisters were beautiful, Hall of Fame. They were very smart. They were very good. Never gave my parents a problem at all.
Right. Would you say you were the black sheep?
100%.
Fair.
I was called the black sheep. I was called the little shit. That was me. And so, looking back now and I think about it, and I've actually talked about this through therapy, is it's almost like I kind of just accepted that. Like, okay, I'm going to be the F up of the family.
Yeah.
Like I had no drive to try in school. Gave my parents hell. I mean, like, if I got D's, we were celebrating. Like that was really good. Like, I mean,
pretty low bar, huh? I was the same way, brother.
I did. I will say I did have a class in high school that when I turned my book in halfway through the semester, because they told me there was no way I could pass, I finished that one. I had a 17 in that class. So I just, man, I did not care.
Sure.
I did not care. I had no drive.
Now, was alcohol only the thing, or was marijuana part of the story at this point?
Yeah, so 15 started drinking, and then that became like every day wanting to figure out, hey, who wants to drink? Where can we drink? How can we drink? Who can buy it? And then it didn't take long. Started smoking marijuana.
Sure.
And so got into that, and then of course loved that. And soon after that was pills. Any pills I could get my hands on. A lot of hydrocodone, Klonopin, Seroquel, Xanax, Adderall, up, down, taking them at school, taking them, take pills at school, get out of school, smoke weed that afternoon, go home, eat dinner, and either try to find somewhere to go that night and do something, or looking back now, I see like this is a really bad problem. Mom, Dad, sorry. If you had ever checked my upper part of my closet, you would have found a liquor store and marijuana and pills, and I had everything hidden. And so none of my friends knew, even my friends that may see this now may be surprised. Even if I wasn't out with them drinking, smoking, taking pills, I was doing it by myself at home.
Yeah.
It was my escape every day. So if I didn't have nowhere to go that night, I was probably sitting in my bedroom doing something, taking pills or going outside smoking weed or sitting there drinking while I watch TV. I wanted to escape everything there was about me.
What were you running from?
That's exactly what we're kind of tackling in therapy right now. But I think a lot of it was I was disappointed in myself. Like I said, I didn't have drive. I felt like I was the black sheep. I felt like I was going to be the one that was going to fail at everything. So it's kind of like I just embraced that and was like, well, this is what I'm going to do.
And here you have these wonderful siblings that are just thriving and not doing anything wrong. And I'm sure that it was difficult to not compare yourself to that and feel less than as a result of that. So, I mean, that's hard, man. I mean, that's why we drink and use, we drink and use to change the way we feel, period.
Yeah. And
but that's good that you're identifying that. And when you identify it, you can move past it.
Yeah. And like I said, a lot of people probably didn't see this. I think I did decent of covering it up, but extremely insecure. Like the thought of going to a party and not being drunk before I got there was unacceptable. Mm-hmm. Like you know, if it was last minute, we're going to go to a party, I was about to take a fifth and like chug half of it so I could go ahead and be drunk enough to where I'd feel comfortable being around people.
Yeah.
Even today I deal with social anxiety, like going out, like crowds, new people. If I know I'm about to meet new people and I don't know anybody there, my anxiety's out the roof. So I think that was a lot of it. Was just unhappy with myself, unhappy with feeling like I wasn't doing enough. I wasn't succeeding at anything. And so the one thing I could succeed at was I could outdrink you. And that was kind of my win, I guess. And it just gave me a chance also to have a confidence in myself that I wouldn't have. Now,
Sure.
The disgusting part of it is I look back, I'm not really sure what the hell was confident about getting so drunk you're puking on yourself or you're passing out in, you know, in a field or something like that. But in the moment, that's what it was. This is something that I can take that changes my personality, that makes me feel more comfortable with myself and around people. And so smoked marijuana, got into the pills. I remember some of the worst was like one of the times soaking blunts in liquid hydrocodone and smoking that plus taking pills and just being zombied out for a day. I had some scares, like I took too many pills one day, passed out in the North Park Mall. And luckily my friends who didn't know I was taking pills, they kind of like quickly figured it out and just like convinced everybody that, oh, he's just sick, and they got me out of there. But looking back, how stupid I was in that, you know, 17 years old, white kid in jeans and a polo, and I was over in Jackson buying marijuana, and got a guy puts a gun in my face and takes all my money and all the weed and everything. And then another time in Jackson with a buddy of mine who's no longer alive now, because he OD'd, his back windshield got shot out after we had bought some stuff and going down the road. And luckily, I kind of woke up my junior year. I started having some buddies that were diving further off in the hole. And I was kind of in a moment where I can remember like thinking about, okay, the weed's been fun, the pills have been fun, like what do I want to try next? And I remember like I was really wanting to try cocaine. Mm-hmm. Like that was going to be my next thing. Like I had been around some guys, watched them snort cocaine, and I was trying to get that courage up to finally do it. And couple of the guys that I was running with at the time, I saw the road they were going down, saw some of them OD, and then at the same time, a blessing that happened, God sending something to distract me, in my opinion. Actually, prom of my junior year, I was started that morning drinking, smoking weed, taking pills all day long, and met a girl that night at prom and hit it off and ended up dating her for 2 years. And she did not do anything like that. And so she never knew I did, but I stopped cold turkey doing anything like that. I would drink every now and then if we went to a party, but I gave all that up to be able to date her for the 2 years we dated. So I actually say now, like looking back, her coming in, into my junior year and me dating her probably saved my life, because soon after that I had more of the crew that I was running with either OD'd, got arrested, suicides, rehabs, that whole kind of crew I was doing some stuff with, battled some harder substances.
Sure.
And I probably would have been right there with them. Because I was always chasing that how can I feel more? How can I get to another level? And so after, so that kind of takes me into, right there around 2021 or 1920, freshman year of college. Me and that girl broke up, and go back to like around 15, 16, I quit going to church. Quit going to church. Every now and then my mom and dad would like pressure me, and I'd go, I'd show up. Usually was hungover or high, but I could always play it off pretty good. And so I had no relationship with God. I mean, my day-to-day thought process was, when can we start drinking? When can we start smoking? When can I start taking pills?
Do you feel as though, at the time, did you feel as though God turned his back on you, or you completely turned your back on him?
I turned it on him.
Okay.
Yeah, and like, we're really going to get into that, but that's kind of been, I say that my life, my testimony is a story of the prodigal son over and over and over and over. Mm-hmm. Because, and God having his hand on me, saving me countless times throughout my life. Because I've always, God will rescue me, turn my back on him, start trying to do it my way again. And then here he comes, he's got to save me again. And that's just on repeat. The amount of times through those teenage years and right there around 18, 19, that how in the world I didn't kill somebody else or kill myself, the shape I was in driving all around the place. I used to just go out and ride by myself and would be drinking beer and smoking blunts, riding up and down Highway 80 and I-20 and all over the place if I didn't have nothing to do.
Yeah.
And so after me and that high school fling broke up, I was here attending Hines and immediately jumped back into, hey, let's party. And so it became, again, every night probably drinking. I wasn't smoking weed, I wasn't taking pills, but it was a lot of alcohol. Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, I was going to be at a bar. Yeah. I was going to be at a club, and I was going to drink until I passed out or until we got in a fight with somebody and got kicked out. And that was all I looked forward to all day, every day. Like, I was attending some classes at Hines. I wasn't doing anything there to try to push myself. And I'm really not sure to this day how I ever talked to my parents into letting me move to Starkville at this time. But I moved up to Starkville for a while and attended the community college up there. And I had tons of friends living up there. And that's where, when I got up there, it just became, it was routine. Every day at noon, we started drinking, and we stopped about 4 o'clock the next morning, and we'd go home, sleep for a little while, and I didn't make it to many classes at all.
I would imagine.
So it was literally just like, and God bless my dad, what I've put him through. I mean, he was paying for my apartment, vehicle, sending me money. And I remember every week when he would send me money, I would go to the grocery store and I would buy enough Totino's pizzas and little corn dog things to get me through the week. That was all I'd have in the freezer. And then I'd take every bit of money I had and fill the fridge up with as much beer and liquor as I could buy with the money I had left over. Yep. And that was it. And so it was just constant. And looking back, like, I think how stupid and how dangerous this was. But I would, a lot of times the next morning when I'd wake up at my apartment, I'd look outside to see like how drunk I was based on how I parked. Yeah, there's sometimes I just parked in the middle of the parking lot, and sometimes up on the curb, sometimes who knows where. and would have no idea how we made it back home. Probably hundreds of times did that. And, I thought this was just the best thing. Like, this is what you're supposed to do. I'm 20 years old. I'm partying. This is what everybody does. And I'll say, like, that's where now looking back, I see the problem is there's a big difference in going out and having some drinks with some friends and enjoying their company and all that, not getting plastered. For me, alcohol during those years was to try to change my personality, to disguise the pain and the disappointment and the hatred I had for myself. Right. Because I wasn't drinking just to loosen up and have fun and go out on the dance floor. I was really wanting to run away from myself, and that was the best way to do it. And
because it works.
Oh yeah,
it works until it stops working.
Yep. And so that kind of period of my life came to a pretty big halt when I got a DUI. And so it was actually on St. Patrick's Day. A good friend of mine had a horrible accident months prior, and I'd gone to visit him, and then I stopped by a party and had some drinks. And when I was headed home, came through a roadblock in Brandon and got arrested. As soon as the officer walked up to the window, I already had my stuff, and I was like, "Hey, I'm ready to go with you." Yeah. Like, this day's been coming for a long time. Like, I'm ready. And so I had to go through that. The embarrassment of my dad coming to get me. That was tough. My dad's you won't hardly hear my dad cuss. He don't drink. He's a great Christian guy. He's just a really good dude. So I knew the disappointment, that was going to be there. But he came and picked me up, and the next morning I woke up, and he said, "No need to go to Starkville." He said, "We'll go up next weekend, pack up the U-Haul, and bring you home." And I was like, "Shoot, man, what am I going to do now?" And he was like, "You better figure it out." And so I kind of went back to as a kid. I always wanted to be a fireman. And so I told him, I was like, I looked, and Pearl Fire was hiring in a few months. And so I started training, started working out with the hope that something would happen with that DUI and make it go away.
Right.
So that I could do it. And so right before the Pearl tryouts, I had court, and luckily the DUI got thrown out.
Wow.
So it completely got ripped up right there in court, thrown out. And so I had a clean slate again. Had another chance. So I pursued the fire stuff, and at 20 years old got into the fire service with the city of Pearl. And that was really, really good for me. Because I never thought I'd be able to do it. I didn't have any confidence in myself of what I could and couldn't accomplish at the time. I had never pushed myself. I'd never really had anybody push me.
Right.
And so here I was entering in. I was this 20-year-old smart ass, out of shape drunk pretty much. And now I'm stepping into a world where it's all about accountability, and everybody's tougher than I am at the moment. And so I stepped in and got surrounded by some really good guys. And that was really good for me. I remember quickly after I got on, I got invited by some of them to go to a music night at Pine Lake. And I was like, man, I ain't been in church since I was like 15. Like, I don't want to do this, but I'm the new guy. Like, I don't need to turn this down. They're asking me to go. So I went, and it was awesome. I immediately kind of felt like, okay, I might ought to get involved with this a little bit. And so I started going to church with some of those guys.
Was this the Reservoir campus? Or?
Yep. Yeah. Yep. This was Reservoir campus. Started going with them, got involved with the young singles group there. So it became, Sunday night, Wednesday night, weekends, always hanging out with those people. And, I started learning how, okay, I can go out and have fun. I don't have to drink. Like, these people like me for who I am, and we can have fun without having to have substances around us and all. And so I stuck with that for quite a while, got involved with small groups, had some really good people around me that were helping me grow as a Christian, and felt very close to God, very happy. Like that's a time period in my life where I look back and I'm like, man, I was very happy. I was very confident. I had a career that few people do. Physically, I was learning how to push myself by some really good guys there. I was getting to help people in a way I'd never been able to before. I was going to church. I had good friends there. I had a good relationship with God at the time. And, I was facing some stuff at the department, that was obviously new, traumatic. As a new guy, you're seeing and dealing with some stuff. But that was a very happy time period in my life. Probably from 15 to then, like, that was the first time I was confident, I was happy with who I was, where I was, and what I was doing. And so through that time, grew as a Christian, had a couple small relationships with some girls there, and that was good, like seeing what dating good, godly girls are like, and had a moment where some other friends of mine were at another church in the area, and kept asking me to come visit with them over there. And so I went, and lo and behold, walked in, saw a girl, head over heels.
Sure. Love at first sight?
Yeah, it was like that. And dated for 2 years, and to be honest, I fully believed that was going to be the girl I married. We had looked at rings, different stuff, but there was aspects with her family that were very negative. Her dad's a pastor. Not one that I have any respect for, to be honest.
Okay.
And so it actually did a lot of damage to me in that relationship in regards to being a Christian. It was just a lot of judgmental. You're not good enough. You're not good enough. You're not good enough. You're not good enough. And so eventually, after 2 years, when that relationship ended, the discipleship that I was in with one of the pastors at the church, I was told couldn't do that anymore because I was no longer dating that preacher's daughter.
Oh.
Couldn't go to the small group that I'd been in for the last couple years. Felt very uncomfortable coming in the church. So I stepped out, and I didn't step foot in a church for 5 years, which is where I have to admit, I as a young Christian, I made a terrible mistake in I allowed a person who is a sinner, just like we all are, who is imperfect, mold my view of what God was and how God saw me.
Right.
And
pastors are nothing more than people.
Exactly. And I promise you, the ones who are not arrogant enough to say they don't have struggle, those men struggle with some of the worst stuff.
Absolutely.
The closer you are to God, the more struggle you're going to have. this was one of those guys that in his book, he don't struggle with anything. He's the most perfect Christian. So molded this to where I made a huge mistake when I met my wife that I married. We weren't involved in church. God was not in the relationship at all. And so we started our relationship off and then eventually got married. And I don't even think we had been to church, if I can remember right, as a dating couple, hardly. And so that was a big error right there. But at that point, I'll kind of back up to, because I'm jumping ahead, but you know, I was a firefighter for 7.5 years. This is kind of important just because this is where I learned, the fire service is where I learned how to disguise my emotions for the first time and to compartmentalize. And something that's very passionate to me now is, you know, wanting first responders, military, different people to be open with some of the trauma we see, and how we handle it, because there's a very strong correlation whenever you're the way you handle stuff at a firehouse or at a police or military. If you handle your home in the same way, you're going to destroy your home. I did it. That's what I did. I learned real quick how to see death and destruction and pain and just bury that down, not talk about it. You know, I'm fine, F it. And I took that home also, you know, rather than talk to my wife about anything, I just push it down. When I did talk, it was like I was talking to, you know, my other firemen or rookies underneath me. You know, I'm talking down to her. I'm talking authoritative. I'm not talking in a loving way. I did not know, and I didn't have anyone at that time that really stepped in and talked to me about the difference of, this is how you act as a fireman, but this is how you need to act in your home, in your relationships, friendships, marriages. And I think that gets missed a lot in the fire service, the police service, is we train the hell out of these guys to tackle everything you can imagine on a scene. But there's really not a lot of training. There's not even a lot of discussion of how do you act at home? How do you be a good man in this aspect and over here? Because there's a switch. I mean, people want to talk. People are like, I don't understand why that cop's an asshole on a traffic stop. Well, he just got done fighting somebody 10 minutes ago. He don't know if you're going to fight him now.
Yeah, and I believe this. Like, we had Tony Shack, Rankin SO, on one of a podcast not too long ago, and he was talking a lot about this as well. And it's incredibly hard to have balance between work life as a police officer or a fireman or anybody that's, you know, first responder, and having, you know, being at home with a family. Like, that is a massive thing to ask a man or woman to do, is be one way where you have to be professional, you have to be guarded, you have to be protective at work, and then you come home and you may be good at it for a while, but eventually you're going to become so callous to what you see every single day that it's virtually impossible to really let anyone at home in. It can destroy families. And
you know, it's funny, like I have one of the worst mouths there is. I've grown up in the fire service and police service. I can't help it right now. Jesus is going to eventually work on that with me. But you know, I catch myself. There's certain people out there in the world that, you know, you can tell them, sir, please be quiet, and that goes in one ear, out the other. Or you can look at that person and say, hey, either shut the fuck up or I'm putting you on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they heard that. The problem is when you're having to deal with people so much in those capacities, and you're always in fight mode. I mean, even when I'm out directing traffic, I'm constantly looking, because there's so many videos out there. There's a recent one where some cops were working a wreck. They're standing out there getting information, and random guy just stops on the side of the road, steps out with an AR, and starts killing them, and kills 4 of them before the 5th one can get shots on him and kill the guy. So it's like, you never know. And so then you go home, and, the second your wife questions anything, you go into fight mode. You're defensive. And you raise.
But that fight mode serves you when you're at work. That fight mode keeps you alive at work. And then to come home and have to drop all of that.
Yep. It destroys your home. You see it a lot too with how you talk to your kids, and how you deal with your kids as well. And I'm about to tell you how it played into. I had a really tough time. Well, I'll say first, like I said, some of the traumatic stuff, and I did have some stuff throughout my fire career that I still think about every day, that I don't think will ever go out of my head. We all do. I'm some of the stuff I know that my buddies have experienced and stuff like that is worse than what I've seen.
Yeah.
But when you're seeing people die, and whenever you're seeing innocent kids die, or you're seeing car accidents, or my worst situation I've ever had was a 2-year-old little girl, 4-wheeler flipped over on her. And when her mom handed her to me, screaming, "Save my baby," I had her brains on my arms and everything. And we did everything we could, but I mean, there was no saving that baby. And it was just like, at the time I had nieces that were their age. And when you're seeing that kind of stuff, and then you got to go home the next morning and everything's fine. And yes, we're called to do jobs like that. And the men and the women that serve and protect through fire, police, I throw nursing and air care people in there as well, military, they are special people. And yeah, you have to face that stuff. But a lot of people do not recognize enough what that does to you. My ex-wife was an ER nurse, and I don't think she would have a problem with me talking about this. She's talked to me about her and some of the other nurses in there. They have days, she works UMCER, they're putting 4 or 5 people in body bags. I mean, when you're seeing that much death, I watched her through our marriage become very cold and unemotional, unsympathetic. Just, you have to, in a way. It's sad. You have to be able to do your job, but it destroys the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And it's a trade-off. There's some people who do it well. I think I personally would love to see and have it as one of my missions. I want guys, girls that are in all these careers to open up more, because I've seen through my personal life, not talking about stuff, not realizing what compartmentalization does. It's great for in the moment on the scene, but where I made the mistake was I did it with the rest of my life. I didn't talk to nobody. I didn't let my wife know about problems that I was having. I didn't let my wife know about problems that our family was having. It was just always, hey, I'm going to white knuckle this thing and figure it out. And I was always pretty good about figuring it out. So that's kind of where I developed what I understand now. Those years is where I really developed that mechanism of shutting myself down and disguising what was going on inside me. And the dark humor, and stuff like that we would use. And I kind of mentioned it last week. I mean, that's where, I would see suicides. I've cut people out of trees. I've seen shotguns to the head. I've seen pistols to the head. I've seen pills. I've read the suicide notes and laid them back on the table and just been like, man, what a coward. And just, it would piss me off to have to go to a suicide because I had no sympathy for them, no empathy. I wouldn't even talk to the family members. Hey, can we hurry up, throw these folks in a body bag so we can go back and eat dinner? Like, nothing, did not care. And we'll get into how that changed. But so after that career, and learning a lot about myself through it, that's where I learned how to push myself. That's where I learned how to do tough stuff that I didn't want to do mentally, which helped me in the next phases of life. My wife, ex-wife now, met her. She was 6 years younger than me. The first time she ever saw me, she told my mom she was going to marry me, and I never even spoke to her. And sure enough, she did marry me. I was a fireman. She was in nursing school, and I started getting a lot of thoughts in my head. I started getting some pressure in my head from other friends, and I think from some social media stuff and all that, how are you going to support the family that you want to support and give this girl everything you want and everything she's going to want on this little fireman's salary? And so I started having a lot stir in me about, man, you're not going to be adequate enough. You're not going to be able to do enough. And so we got married. We were married 8 months, and I made the decision to take a job in Midland, Texas, on the other side of Texas.
Yeah, that's that is literally as far away from here as you can get.
I knew one guy, and so he was my best friend growing up. He had moved out there. I knew one guy, and so 8 months into our marriage, I packed up a enclosed trailer. I set out, and I can still sit here and see my wife and our 2 dogs standing there the day I left. And I drove to Midland, Texas, and I cried all the way there. And I left her here in our house in Brandon to finish nursing school for 10 months. And so I went out there and got an apartment, hit the ground running with what I was doing out there, seismic permitting, and a couple of things of not having my family out there. I had a lot of extra time to throw into work. And then also I realized, like, it was really easy compared to the fire service, honestly. The work ethic that some really good guys there had built into me and had helped me mature into. I went out there and blew past everybody in that department very quickly. 10 months later, got my wife out there to me, and so she moves out there, gets a job at the hospital as a nurse. I have a wonderful job. Like, I have a cake job. It's great. Great money, Monday through Thursday, really, and just really nothing hard about it. And eventually got pegged to help start a subsidiary of the parent company, where I got thrown into a world I had no idea about. So it was all data processing using aerial imagery for GIS purposes, to support oil and gas. So I was learning on the fly. I I was the dumbest one in the room, which is right where I wanted to be. I had some of the smartest, most intelligent people around me. It was really insane. It was really cool to watch what some of these guys could do. My job as operations manager and did business development and sales. I was just traveling around, talking to clients, taking clients out, and moving those guys along in the project, because they were the kind of smart, intelligent people that they would stay stuck on that one problem for weeks because they just wanted to make it better and better and better. So that was really all I had to worry about, was keep the flow going. And so, man, life was really good. Like, great money, debt-free, great credit, gorgeous wife, fun job. You know, we're out there, we're finally able to just have fun as a newly married couple. And then not too long after being out there, we got pregnant with our first child. Tristan was born in 2018, and that was growing up as far back as I can remember as a young kid. Like, I had two things I wanted to do in life: be a husband, be a father. And I wanted a little boy, and like 3 years later, a little girl. Like, that's all I cared about. If I could have a beautiful wife, a little boy, and a little girl. And so here I am, life's good. You know, God's nowhere in the picture, but life's good. I got a little boy coming. And so we had our little boy, and that's where, as soon as we had him, I started kind of feeling some depression type stuff. I felt really bad that we were so far from home. I mean, it was a 13-hour drive for us to get home. Obviously, there weren't many people going to come out to Midland, Texas, to a Dust Bowl to come visit us. So I started working on trying to figure out how to move us back closer to home. So we rolled the dice, made a move back to Dallas to get a little bit closer. Still working for the same company. But after a little while, things started struggling with work there. Kind of found out that the parent company was financially in a spot that I did not know they were in, and that our time was very limited before things were going to crumble. So I started looking for I was told by management, hey, you need to start getting your ducks in a row for something else. And I just remember feeling like, shit, we just freaking moved here. Like, I don't want to make another change. My wife had been pressuring me about, here we are moving around, like, when are we going to settle somewhere? And that was such a goal of mine, was to settle and raise a family. But I didn't have a choice. I was told, like, you got like 3 months and we're probably going to be shutting down. So from there, found another job, went to work for a company, did not fit in well there. Some of the stuff that was going on that I uncovered was unethical, illegal, with what we were doing. I was writing government requests for proposals, and they were falsifying some information on there, which is federal offenses. So I ended up with the arrogant multi-millionaire guy that owned the 7 companies calling me and chewing me out, telling me to stay in my lane, and we had a fun conversation.
I would imagine that was exciting, yes.
Yeah. So he didn't realize I really didn't care about his money, and I remember telling him, I said, you're scared. He said, what do you mean? I said, because you have 3 attorneys on retainer. I said, and I'm talking to you. I said, if I had done anything wrong, I'd be talking to an attorney. I said, so you can go F yourself. That was my response to him. And he's like a billionaire guy. And he realized then that I had them by the balls. So, but I left that company, and now here we are again. It was like, a 1 or 2 year cycle of changes. And Now here we are again. What are we going to do? We got to make a move. And so we decided to move back home to Mississippi. And I went to work with, at the time, what was my best friend for 18 years. He was building houses, and he had asked me to come in and help him grow his company. He, at the moment, had like 6 houses going. Everything was kind of pen and paper, rudimentary. He couldn't stand having to sit in front of a computer, so just a lot of undocumented, no processes, no procedures, stuff like that. And so I came in with him, and my wife went to UMC, and we started. I really thought, man, we've hit the jackpot. We came full circle. We learned a lot out here. Now we're back. We got family around us. We got a beautiful baby boy. I'm about to have a really good job. She's got a really good job working at one of the best hospitals. Like, okay, it's time to settle down. This is going to be good. And so went to work with him building houses. Didn't know nothing about it. And so in a year and a half.
Is that where you and I cross paths?
It
We're
is.
finishing one of those tubs off of just off of Lakeland.
Yep.
Okay, at the back there.
Yep.
Yeah,
that was it. Yeah. So that's the first time I ever met you. And so man, we went from like 6 houses to 23 houses active in like a year and a half. And we were mostly building, $500,000 to $800,000 houses.
It was a beautiful house.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, they were big. And so with that comes some very interesting customers who can be mighty nice at the initial meetings and quickly turn into some of the worst people you'll deal with. And so that's kind of where, life was looking awesome, man. We built big, beautiful house out on Stump Ridge. And so from the outside looking in, what people were seeing was, man, Jeremy has a gorgeous wife. He's got a beautiful son. My wife we got pregnant again. We had a daughter on the way. And I'm sitting there like, man, okay, this is what I wanted. I wanted a beautiful wife. I wanted a son. 3 years later, I wanted a little girl. Like, this is planning out just like I ever dreamed of. Gorgeous $600,000 house on Stump Ridge, big shop, got the beautiful F-250, her vehicle. Like, we had, from the outside looking in, we had what everybody wants. The dark side of that people don't see, and is I was miserable for a few reasons. One, the amount that I was working was way more than I needed to be. The people I was dealing with, I'm a very kind person, but if you want to threaten me, I promise you I can be more crazy, more violent than you can. And so when I have homeowners calling me, telling me they're going to whoop my ass tomorrow when they see me because their cabinet got built wrong, and I'm like, bro, I didn't even build your cabinet. Like, I can get it fixed for you, but being told that you're a piece of shit project manager, you don't know what the fuck you're doing, you're an idiot, because the flooring company sent the wrong floor. Like, something totally outside of my hands. It didn't get installed. It's just a 2-day delay. We're going to ship it back. We're going to get the right stuff. But just this constantly all day long getting cussed out, getting talked down to, and trying to be, nice with them. But at the same time, the guy I was working with, he's, got a whole nother full-time gig. He's MIA most of the time. I done started kind of just pretty much handling everything. And he'd be on vacation and get a text message from a homeowner wanting to talk to him because he is the builder. He's the one that sold them on using the company. And he would just screenshot it, send it to me, and say, take care of this shit. So then I'd call him, and it would be, we didn't want to talk to you. You're the one effing up the project. And I'm like, okay. So it started becoming just this constant beatdown of can't ever get nothing right. Got people pissed off all the time. The guy that I was working with, he's MIA half the time. Didn't feel like I could call him for help or anything. And then the money started rolling in because houses started selling. And then the comments started coming in that I was making too much money. How he could afford 2 project managers for what he was paying me and all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, well, I'll also helped you get to where you're at now. So he and I started having a lot of stress between one another, which was sad. We had been best friends for 18 years, like brothers. And it tore us apart. This whole deal did. And so in that moment, I started shutting down for the last couple years. I was neglecting my family, not on purpose, but you know, when you're working at that capacity building houses, what happens is you got all these people get off work at 5, 6 o'clock. They all go check their houses, and then they're all wanting to bitch about it. So your phone's blowing up 7, 8, 9 o'clock. And dear God, if you don't answer, it's about to be just text message after text message after text message. And so I wanting to ensure that I tried to do everything I could to make them happy, to keep my job so that I could keep the money coming in to afford this life that I'd finally given my wife and my kids, and I didn't want to let go of. I would answer those calls. I would deal with it. But the stress that it was putting on me and what I didn't see at the time was, you know, I'm over here arguing on the phone, dealing with these people. My wife's over here trying to get two babies bathed to bed, and I'm not helping. I'm not doing anything with them. I was so stressed. I hated what I was doing. I had no purpose. I very, 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 very rarely heard thank you from anybody that we built those houses for. I mean, I literally had a guy show up one night and walk in my shop at 8:30 at night and want to fight me because of his cabinets getting built wrong. And I was at such a point of stress, I scared myself. This night, I saw him come fishtailing around in front of my house, and I texted him and I said, don't drive like that in front of my house. I said, if you're that mad, just go ahead and stop. He pulled up and walks in my shop, and I had put a big old wrench in the back of my pants, and I had decided, I was like, I'm going to break his kneecaps, and then I'm going to beat the dog out of him. Like, I was so angry. Like, my mental spot of where I was at was drinking every day again to try to deal with the stress of, I know I'm not being a good enough father. I know I'm not being here for my kids enough. You know, I don't feel like I'm doing good enough at work because there's all these problems happening. We won't even get into the world of trying to navigate all these subcontractors and how they act, you know, and no dependability there. But it all fell back on me. And at the same time, I could see the light at the end of the tunnel going out between me and the guy I was working with. I knew that eventually this is not going to be able to sustain. What am I going to do? Because there's not a lot I can do to replace this type of income that can afford the life I've given. And so I'll kind of finish that story. This guy shows up. He had done told me enough times he was going to whoop my ass that I finally told him after I'd done been drinking. And I told him, I said, come on in here. And when when he walked in there, I told him I was so mad, and I meant every bit of it. I wanted to fight him so bad. And I looked him dead in his eyes, and I said, let me explain something to you. I said, I want you to hit me. I said, I would love for it. I said, because when you do, I said, your skull's going to get cracked on that trailer right there. I said, and I'm not going to quit hitting you until you quit breathing. I said, you're on my property. You're in my shop at 8:30 at night over a cabinet. I said, you've threatened me enough. I said, so let's do this. And he looked at me, and he's a military guy. He looked at me, and he was like, no. He's like, we're not going to do that. He's like, I can see it in your eyes. You meant everything you just said. I said, dude, I'm begging you. I said, I'd give anything to do this. And he said, no. He said, you're hurting more than I realized. I said, well, then I suggest you get out of here. And I walked out. His wife was sitting in the truck, who had been a complete BI to me multiple times. And she's all crying, and I was seeing red at the moment. So I went out there, and I punched his truck and told her, I was like, get your hands out of your face. I was like, you're the one instigating wanting to do this. I was like, watch what's about to happen to your husband. And I was like, don't get in your truck. I was like, come on. And I mean, I kept, like, at that point, it was like months and months and months of everything just blowing up. And I remember that guy finally looked at me, and he was like, his whole demeanor had changed. And he was like, Jeremy, he was like, you're hurting really bad. He was like, I can see it in your eyes. He was like, I don't want to fight you. He was like, I know you're going to hurt me. He was like, I can tell in your eyes that it would end bad. And he's like, do not swing on me. He was like, I'm about to give you a hug. And I was like, man, if you try anything, I was like, I'm gonna effing kill you right here in this road. And he did. He gave me a hug, and he apologized. And I remember I started kind of crying, and crying and still trying to be tough. I was like, all right, well, you got your hug. Get the fuck out of here. Like, because I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know if I ought to be vulnerable right now or if I ought to beat the dog out of this guy. And so he left, and I walked inside, and in my wife and I's room, had a chair in there, and she was laying in the bed, and I walked in there, and I started crying, and I told her, I said, Shelby, I scared myself. And she was like, what do you mean? I was like, so-and-so came over, this is what happened, da-da-da-da-da. I was like, this is what I was prepared to do. This is what I was about to do. And she was just like, Jeremy, that's not good. I was like, I know. I was like, I know I'm in a bad place. And unfortunately, this is not her fault. If I could turn back time, I wish she would have been willing to fight me more and push me to go get some help. Because in this whole time also.
But did she do that for some time before she gave up?
So I can remember a few instances where she said, I think you need some medicine, or I think you ought to go to therapy. Or like when we were in Texas, we tried to do some marriage counseling, and I just really couldn't stand the lady that we went to, so I didn't stay going to it. But it was always like, it'd be like in the middle of a fight or something, or an argument, and she would be like, you need to get some help. And of course, in that moment, it's fight mode. I'm like, oh, fuck that. I don't need help.
But in her eyes, she's brought these things to your attention.
Yeah.
Because she wanted to help you. She wanted you to do better, and you didn't do those things. So in her eyes, you don't value what she says, and you don't listen to a single fucking thing that she says.
Exactly.
So when she begins thinking that, then we know what happens next.
Yeah. So
and she feels justified in that too.
Oh yeah. And looking back, like, my parents also, they were like, Jeremy, you need to get some help. Like, the anger, the thoughts, and what they were seeing and what my wife was seeing was the tip of the iceberg. They had no clue. The truth of it was there for that year and a half. I was pretty much all day, every day. As I drove around, I was picking out different trees, trying to think about, from all the wrecks I've worked, how I would need to hit the tree in my truck to ensure that I die, to where there's no chance of me making it out. And my goal at that time was, I had upped my life insurance policies and stuff, because I dealt every day with the thought in my head that I'm not a good enough husband. My wife is too pretty. She could easily go find somebody better. Had a lot of fear that she was going to find somebody else. I just kind of felt like I was waiting on the day for it to happen. So in my eyes, I was like, I could go ahead and kill myself and make it easier on her. I had thoughts of my kids are so young, they're not attached to me yet. My wife could take all this money, be debt free, put a bunch of money in the bank for the kids, find a better husband that could be a better father to our kids, and maybe our kids will never even really know about me. Maybe she could cover it up completely. And then, everything, like, I wouldn't be a burden on anybody, this and that. That's kind of really where my head was. So I spent, man, I can probably remember for a year driving down Lakeland begging God, let me have an accident. I'd see 18-wheelers coming and just be like, oh, man, I could turn in front of that. That thing's running 80. I could turn in front of that and get a T-bone, and that would surely take me out. Just constantly thinking like that. What could I do to take myself out in an accident? When I would come home in the evenings, I'd eat with my family, and then I would walk over to my bar, make a drink, and I'd go outside. And I would leave my wife to tend to our kids. And I would sit on that back porch and just look into the woods, and I would just sit there and keep pouring drink after drink after drink. I was looking back now, and after going through therapy and understanding what was going on, I was severely depressed. Even though from the outside looking in, my world was beautiful and perfect, I was extremely depressed, and I was extremely afraid. Like, I didn't feel like I had anybody I could talk to. I didn't have God in my life. I didn't have any godly brothers in my life. The friends that I did have in life, love them to death. Nothing wrong with this advice to a degree. Was, yeah, man, get off your ass and make it happen. Same advice I gave people. The part that I think a lot of women struggle with, and this is something that I one day want to tackle much more deeply in here with some professional help in here, is because I've tried to explain this to my ex-wife back then. Why did I not come talk to her? In my life, there was one person that I really never wanted to disappoint, and it was my wife. So for me to come to her and say, I have failed again our finances are in this shape. I know I'm about to lose this job. This dream house that I built you, we're not going to be able to afford it in 7 months. The vehicles we're not going to be able to afford. And I have no clue what to do. And oh yeah, by the way, your strong, protective husband is so effed up in the head, I'm thinking about running into trees every day to try to kill myself. Like, in my mind, through that time period, me wanting to die was so much easier to face than to go sit down and tell my wife any of that stuff, or even to go tell my parents.
I get that completely.
And I've talked to dozens of men through men's conference I've been through different people who have reached out through some of the stuff I've shared, and they've been like, man, I've never talked to anybody, but I feel like I can talk to you about some of this. And same story. Guys that have been married 25 years have called me, and they're like, dude, I can't talk to my wife about anything. They're like, I would rather take a bullet between the eyes than to tell my wife some of my failures. And that breaks my heart now, because I've lived out the full cycle of what happens when you go into this. But
society tells us that we have to be strong and
Yep.
we can't show weakness. And if we show any weakness whatsoever, we're worthless, we're useless, we're a low-value man, and nobody will love us.
Yeah. And one of the areas that it shows it the most, in my opinion, is right now, statistically, men are committing suicide at a rate 4 times higher than women. People just do not realize that pressure that is on men. And like you said, I mean, it's easier to talk to a stranger and tell them your problems than it is your wife. Like, for me to go in there, and that's what's sad is looking back, and I'm sharing some of this in hopes that it helps some other people in their marriage and in their life right now. Man, to tell you how stupid I was, and I'm going to say how stupid my wife was too. She is in our gorgeous, beautiful house, sitting in the bathtub, drinking a glass of wine, wishing I would come in there. And I'm in the freaking shop, chugging whiskey, crying, trying to plan out how I can kill myself so she could have a better husband and kids could have a better father. Or I'm outside just destroying my shop because I'm so full of anger and hurt and pain. There's 2 people on the same piece of property, 50 yards from one another, both hurting, both needing somebody, both of us so fucking stubborn neither one of us will walk to the other one. That was our life for the last year.
It happens every day.
Yep. And that's the crazy thing is, like, I literally, so I would sit there on the back porch or in the shop, and I would drink and drink and drink until she would text me and say, I'm going to sleep. And then I'd give it about 30 minutes so that then I could go in, slip in the bed, and not have to face her. Jeez. Because I knew if she would have one time, grabbed me by the shirt and said, what is wrong? Like, not in a defense, not in a fight mode. If she had ever asked me at the right moment, like, I would have just lost it. Like, I mean, there were days where I'd ride around checking houses, and in between houses, I would just be bawling my eyes out in my truck drinking because I was just hurting. It wasn't like I wasn't angry at a certain person. I wasn't angry at a certain thing. I was just so unhappy, and I felt like I was just drowning. Like I didn't know who I was. I wasn't proud of who I was. I knew I was sucking as a father. I knew I was sucking as a husband. I was doing everything I could work-wise to make people happy, but hell, everybody's pissed off at me. And my only thing was like, I got to provide this money. That was the main thing. And so with that, finally came to a head and agreed for me to go back to the police academy. That's where I thought, I'll go to the police academy. I will have some purpose again in life. I'm not going to chase money. We're going to downsize. So we were in agreement for that. And so that started that journey. Here I am, 35 years old, not in the young shape I used to be. I'd already had one back surgery earlier in my life, and I'm going to jump back in. I'm going to go be a cop, and we'll figure the money thing out kind of deal. I had started really wanting to shift my mentality of focusing on, I want my life to have purpose. I want to be a better father. I want to be a better husband. And I felt like that was step one. Go back to something that I can have a lot of passion, a lot of purpose for, and that I can go to work, and when I go 10/7, I can go home and be dad and husband. So through that, joined Richland PD, and immediately had to push my academy date because we almost lost my father to some heart issues. So it got pushed from January to April. In March, I blew the disc in my back out again. My whole left leg went numb. A week and a half later, I was in surgery and had my second back surgery. And they told me, there's no way you're going to be able to go to the academy in July. Like, this is impossible. And all I heard was challenge. And so got released a couple of weeks before my PT test, went, smoked my PT test, got in the academy. So I started July 9th. And kind of during this time, like I knew that me and my wife things were rocky. Things weren't good. Things weren't where I ever wanted them to be. And my whole goal was, I'm going to go to this police academy. It's going to help me get a lot of stuff out of my system. I'm going to come out a lot happier, a lot better person. And then we're going to really tackle our marriage, and we're going to get this back right. I had started having my walls brought down, especially through watching the Sean Ryan podcast. I credit that a lot because I was watching these badass guys, SEAL Team 6, Delta guys, Marside guys, who were talking about their struggles and their, they've destroyed their families, they're in addictions, they're all these things, and they started actually getting help. And I was like, man, these are the most badass people in the world, and they're willing to get help. So it started bringing my walls down, but I never told my wife that. My idea was, okay, I'm going to go to the academy. I get out of the academy. I'm going to give this therapy thing a try. I had a couple guys in my life that were going to therapy, and they had started telling me, and so I was getting more open to it. I was realizing I needed it. But again, never told my wife any of this. So I go to the academy, spend 3 months at the academy, get pushed physically, mentally like I hadn't in a really long time in some aspects ever. And coming home on the weekends for our breaks, things were real tense between me and my wife. But I just kept having that focus of get the academy done, and we're going to work on this. And I graduated the academy on September 21st. And on the drive home from Hattiesburg, my wife looked over and told me we were getting a divorce on the same day I graduated the academy. And it was kind of like I'd seen it coming, but I was like, we had thrown that word out there a time or two. unfortunately. And I was like, man, we can fix this. We can fix this, you know. She had already lined up for us to do some counseling and stuff. So I was like, you know, not too big a deal. We're going to fix this. I didn't really realize what she meant. Like, she was committed. Like, she was leaving. And over the next few days, started understanding more details of what was going on, and that there were other people involved. I'll leave it at that. And at this point, I completely lost my fucking mind. I also completely blamed myself, 100%. And that's where I went into my darkest times of, I got in my truck and I viewed it as I had failed my wife, I had failed my kids, I had failed my parents who have been married 46 years or whatever it is. I wasn't able to do that. I failed my sisters who have had good marriages. I failed everybody. You know, I always wanted to be an example of a good husband and a good father. So I failed everybody. And so, like, all those feelings I've had throughout my life of not being good enough, being a failure, letting people down, it just all compiled at one moment. And so the first really bad act that I had was I got in my truck, and I remember I sent my wife a list of like all pertinent information she can need. Passwords, bank accounts, who to contact, this, that, and another. Turned my phone on Do Not Disturb, and I cranked up the hardest rock music I could, as loud in my truck as I could. And when I hit the interstate in Pearl, I never let off the gas until I got to Meridian. So I ran 120 all the way there. I was trying to hit deer. I was trying to run. I drove off in the middle of the median at 120, trying to make it flip. I was trying everything I could to make my truck wrap. And I couldn't. Like, I literally was like driving down, like cutting it hard and come right back up on the road and go. And I was yelling and cussing at God. And I finally got to a point where I remember saying, all right, God, you know what? F you. If you're not going to take me out, then let's talk to Satan. And I started asking Satan to give me the strength to kill myself that night. And just literally yelling, fuck you, God. I hate you. Satan, give me the strength. Like, give me the strength right now to kill myself. And so pulled my pistol out, made sure it was chambered, and here I am 120 miles an hour driving down the road, taking my pistol and just like punching myself in the head with it. Finger on the trigger, trying to make it go off. And this went on for hours to the point I was so exhausted. And I kind of went through all the levels of, okay, you know, my wife, in my mind, and I'm not saying this is actually what she would feel. I don't believe that. She's a better person than this. But in my mind, I had gone through the list of people that it was going to affect. You know, wife, she'll be happy. Problems are solved. I'm gone. Kids, they're so young. Wife will find somebody to replace me, and he'll be a great father to them, better than what I can be to them, obviously. You know, sisters are going to be upset, but they'll grieve it. They'll get through it. They'll understand. Parents, they'll grieve it, get through it. I could justify everything except for every moment right when I was about to pull that trigger, I would see Tristan, my little boy. And so that's why I call him my angel. Because Brecken was so little that I really had it in my mind. And I mean, I had been gone for 3 months. And before, I hadn't really attached to her a whole lot. Like, I really didn't even think she would notice if I was gone or not. But my little boy is my world, and I'm his world. And so, like, that would be, like, the last thing. Like, we're literally gun to my head, and, like, bam, all I could see was him. And so I finally gave up that night and went home and laid down on the couch for a little bit, and then got up, took the kids to school, and I went out to the rock quarry at Marquette, and I just started walking. And at this point, I had been up like 40-something hours without sleep. I hadn't ate in like 36 hours. I was so weak. But I remember I went out there, and I just started walking. I had no idea what I was doing, where I was going. And I just started saying, all right, God, you won last night. Like, you won, Satan lost. What do we do now? And I just kept giving him that credit. And I finally sat down by some water, and I just let it out finally. I just started bawling my eyes out and asking him if he would save me, if he would get me through everything that I was going through, that I would walk through every bit of it, no matter how bad it hurt, no matter how ugly it got, that I'll walk through every bit of it with you if you promise me to use it in some kind of good way. Hence the reason we're sitting here today. That was the deal that me and God made that day. And now things weren't pretty after that. It was still, I had some really bad nights. I started developing really bad panic attacks. I had some severe panic attacks. Today I still deal with my legs shake. 35 years, I've never had that problem. My legs shake really bad, especially going downstairs. And so I reached out. I knew, I was like, okay, I got to get help. I can't go through this by myself. So reached out to Pine Lake, got to talking to some of them, who put me in touch with a wonderful guy who's my therapist. And then he got me connected to a psychologist that could get some medicine, which that was a huge hurdle for me. Huge hurdle to accept that I needed medicine, because previously in my life I looked at anyone who took medicine as they were weak. You know, they were too much of a little punk to be able to handle life themselves, and even made statements about, you know, people in my wife's family that took medicine, in my own family that took medicine, that I regret a lot that I ever said. So got on medicine, started doing therapy, and but I was still struggling, man. The panic attacks were horrible. There was certain content that was just on a reel in my head that haunts me every day, and I think it will every day for the rest of my life. And in the beginning, I didn't know how to deal with it, and so, you know, stuff pertaining to the divorce, and then just this constant Satan in my ear of how much of a failure you are. You know, you were supposed to be a spiritual leader. You let your family fall apart. Now you can't do nothing about it. Now you don't get to see your kids for a week at a time. Just all these things, and it did land me one night in UMC, having severe panic attacks. Thought I was going to get to go up there and just get some medicine for some anxiety, and it turned turned into a getting put in the UMC psych area, and everything was good for a while. Doctor was like, yeah, man, you're fine. He's like, we just need to get you some anxiety medicine. We're going to get you out of here. And this is kind of a funny story. This very stupid nurse who hopefully lost her job comes walking in and is like, take all your clothes off, put this gown on, put all your contents in this bag. And I was like, why? What are we doing? She's like, you're getting transferred and going into a 72-hour psych evaluation hold. And I was like, time out. I was like, I've already talked to the doctor. He told me I get to leave. I was like, look, this isn't my real name. My wife works in the ER here. Like, this is who I am. I was like, go talk to a supervisor. She looked at me. She said, so you want to do it the hard way or the easy way? And I was like, I'd like to do it the correct way. I was like, so get a supervisor. Next thing you know, she comes back in. She's got 3 syringes in her hand, 3 UMC cops, and a couple of nurses. And so, of course, I'm like, I know what's about to happen. I was an EMT for 8 years. I stand up, get in the corner, and I looked at her. I was like, look, you need to get a supervisor. I done called my wife, got her on speakerphone. She's yelling at them. And I told that girl and I told them UMC cops, I was like, look, I know that's Haldol, propofol, and a flush. I said, I know what y'all are about to do to me. I said, and I'm just going to tell you. I said, I'm pretty sure I can take the first 4 of you that come in here. I said, and I'm going to break y'all's arms is my goal. I said, until y'all can tase me. Like, I had done gone into just full fight mode. And finally, a supervisor comes running in there and, like, grabs that girl and was like, what are you doing? Like, there's no orders for this. He's leaving. He's being discharged. She was like, you read the wrong order. She was like, get out. And then turned to me and she was like, Jeremy, I am so sorry. And I just looked at her. I was like, get everybody out of this room. And so when they shut the door, like, I put the bed up against there and I broke the table to get me a shield. Because I was like, if they come back in here to tase me, I know what I need to do. Like, I need to catch them prongs so that I can get my hands on them. Like, it was horrible. I sat down in the corner and for an hour I cried. And I was like, and it really pisses me off now because, and I was actually dealing with this on the way up here on the phone call, trying to get somebody some help that's needing some help. Is that's what's wrong right now is you don't fucking need to be doped up and strapped to a bed. You just need somebody to talk to, and you need some anxiety medicine, and this is the way they end up treating you. Now multiply that at the fact that I was also a police officer. So me just wanting to get some anxiety medicine for panic attacks and going the ER route that night because my lieutenant made the decision to do that, not that he made the wrong one, that took my badge and my gun for a month. I lost my badge and my gun. I went on administrative leave, and then I had to do weekly psych evaluations through DPS with their psychologist. So now here you are, a guy that's already struggling. I've lost everything. I've lost everything in the world that mattered to me. And now I just lost my badge and my gun because you told me I could go get some anxiety medicine. Like, the system for mental health is horrible. You get into the military side of it. That's what I was dealing with on the way up here, trying to work with some people in the military to figure out some better avenues for people that are needing some help so that it don't go on their record, it don't go on their insurance, it don't, they don't lose their job, they don't lose everything. I mean, there's guys sitting around that I know right now that are contemplating suicide. They are struggling. They need medication for anxiety and depression, and they can't get it because of all the red tape that'll happen. So with that, came out of that. I know we're getting close on time, so I'm going to speed this up a little bit. I fell into my old ways, and I went on like a 16-day drinking binge, really bad. So I was, for about 16 days, I had gone and bought a ton of Jack Daniels. So every night would be a fifth of Jack Daniels, take some Klonopins, sit in the recliner with my Jack Daniels and my pistol. And I would dry fire that pistol against my head over and over and over, imagining dying. And then quite a few times, I'd load it and I'd sit there with a gun to my head and see how far back I could pull the trigger on a Glock without it going off, like past the back wall, like how the gun never went off. That was God. Woke up multiple nights with a empty bottle of Jack, pistol still in my hand, finger on the trigger, passed out in the recliner. The one thought I had during that entire time was, one, I just wanted relief from everything. I wanted all the stuff in my head to stop. And I wanted to do everybody else a favor. And I saw me killing myself as doing everybody a favor. So I was trying night after night to get the courage up. Looking back and after discussing it in some therapy stuff is, to put a gun to your head and pull the trigger is not an easy task. So I was drinking and I was taking some pills and I was doing things to try to get that courage up. And it's only by God having his hand on me that I didn't do it. It kind of all came to a head. The drinking, the using anything, and the suicide attempts came to a head one night. I had really gotten the courage all the way up. Like I had made the decision. I sat down that night and I wrote letters to Tristan and to Brecken with all the things I wanted to tell them about life. And so I wrote them letters, and I had picked out my spot where I was going to do it. I had reached out to my ex-wife. Don't really know why. I guess wanted to tell her goodbye, which wasn't a good idea. And I had a buddy of mine that I talked to probably every 6, 7, 8 months. But we had just recently talked a few weeks before, a really good guy. And for some reason, I was sitting there in the car. I had set Tristan's note up on the dash, Brecken's note up on the dash, and I was going to just step out of the truck and do it right there so that the truck could be sold. I was thinking about all these things. But just clear as day, this voice of just call Matt Cockrell, who will be on here in a couple weeks. Call Matt Cockrell. And I did. It was 12:05 at night. He answers, and real quickly he gets a guy named Rocky on the phone, talks to me about everything, and they talked me out of it. And I'm going to leave that scenario at that because me and Matt want to kind of talk about that in here together when he comes. I did not think I was that bad off. That's what's weird when you're in that moment. I've even told my therapist, I'm like, I really didn't think it was that big a deal that I was dry firing a gun against my head and in my mouth. There was no bullet in it. What's the big deal? But listening to Matt describe the state that I was in, the level of drunk, the level of despair, and the level of give up I had is powerful. And so they ended up talking to me about coming on a men's retreat with them, a Charis men's retreat. Went on that with them, and that's really where things took a huge turn for me.
Was Brad at this one? Brad Barrington?
Yeah. Yep. Brad Barrington was there. A lot of other great guys. That's where me and Thomas met. But at this retreat is where I really laid everything down to God. And I fully gave it up to him. And since then it has been a journey of not wanting to do anything with suicide, not needing to drink to disguise myself. I've learned how much God loves me right where I'm at. And most of all, and what SaveOne is all about, and the reason I'm sitting here today doing this and being so honest with everybody, is I was asking myself, why all these things, and I left out so many details, so many things that we could have gone into, stories, but constantly asking, why am I having to go through this? And I finally have that answer. God had to let me go through all that I went through. He had to close all these doors to get me back to this point so that he could have me do this right here.
Everything happens for a reason.
Yep.
And God uses everything for his good.
Yep, 100%.
Especially the bad stuff.
So, because you cannot talk to somebody about alcoholism if you've never been down that road. Exactly. You can't talk to somebody about their drug use if you've never been high. And you cannot relate to somebody who wants to commit suicide until you've been to the point where you're punching yourself in the head with a pistol trying to make it go off, or you're holding it in your mouth, begging Satan for the strength to do it. And so I had to go down some dark roads. I made, in my opinion, in the areas that I want to help so bad is in the first responder world, how to navigate that better. There's a lot of stuff in the first responder world and the military world that needs to improve around mental health. I made a lot of mistakes as a man in my marriage. I made a lot of mistakes. I can only speak to and own my mistakes. My wife's story is her story, not mine to tell. But I made a lot of mistakes in our marriage that could have been different. I want people to learn from that. I want to see marriages, especially in today's world where nobody values marriages. All your social media is toxic and narcissistic, and if you're struggling, go find somebody else. That's what marriage has been lost so bad in the world. And then obviously just the overall substance abuse, mental health, suicide. I want men especially to start opening up and asking for help, talking to somebody, and getting rid of this stigma that we all got to be tough as shit and not be able to talk to anybody. Because you may think you're fine, just like I did, for a decade, and then when that event happens in your life that triggers all of it at one moment. I mean, I've sat in front of 3 psychologists, therapists, and a couple pastors at this point. And if I really went into the deep details of a lot of stuff, every one of them have told me, they're like, it's a miracle you're alive. It really is. They were like, I didn't even realize that I had gone down a dark road. I really didn't think it was that big a deal. I'm getting drunk. Yeah, I'm thinking about wanting to shoot myself. But I didn't do it, so it's not a big deal. And then as I've dove into therapies and stuff, and I realized how far down that hole I went, it was pretty bad. And man, I have so much empathy now. I said it last week. My heart breaks to know that there's people out there that don't feel like they have somebody they can pick up the phone and call. Because I've been there. It's the worst feeling in the world. It is the worst feeling in the world. To be surrounded by people and still feel alone. And so I want to change that. That's my mission, is to be an example, to be vulnerable. I can tell you that this today was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. I've never told my life story. I've never given my testimony to anybody. In future episodes, I'm sure we'll dive into more detail in certain aspects of it, but it's hard, but it's also freeing. Letting it be known that, hey, I'm not perfect. None of us are perfect. We all got struggle. Everybody's struggling with something. And whenever you start opening up, it's amazing. You open up an empathetic side of other people that you didn't know existed either. We live in a world, and here we are, podcast, social media. It's what we're built on right now, and what we're wanting to, we need the likes, we need the shares, but I'll be honest, I hate social media because it is so much bullshit. It is nothing but snapshots of the best part of your day. It don't show the other 23 hours and 55 minutes of your life. It shows that one photo that you tried 12 times to get. Now everybody thinks your family's perfect, but you just got in the vehicle when you left, and you and your wife cussed each other out in front of your kids. And y'all are having affairs and all kind of stuff. Like, it's bull crap. It shows so much of how much materialistic thing matters. And it makes me sick because it's affecting more and more and more mental health and marriages, especially. Being real is non-existent in this world today. And I want to change that. So hopefully hearing some of my story, my big thing, anyone who listens to this, it's very easy to get a hold of me. You can get a hold of me through TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. Please reach out if you want to talk, if you got questions for me, or if you're just curious if I have someone in my network of people that struggles with some of the same stuff as you do. We're not therapists. It's not gonna be on your medical record. We're just good guys that want to help you. So if you want somebody to talk to, get in contact with us. We'll stay up all night and talk to you if we need to.
So. Amen. Well done, sir.